And I should say, I do have another dress and necklace, just in case you're wondering at that picture. Oh, thank you. So I just bought a copy of my book up here in case anybody, if you haven't seen it, I do have copies, a few copies here today, if anybody would like to buy one. I would love to know if anybody's read it already. Margaret at the back, fantastic. Margaret's also featured in the book, so yeah, great. So a couple of days ago, I was actually talking just down the road at PwC to around 70 women who've been on their leadership programs. The people partner for Deals asked me a question at the beginning. He said, what surprised me most as a result of writing my book? And it was a really interesting question, apart from the fact that what surprised me was I actually wrote it, because that was quite hard. But I think when I went into writing the book, it was about how women can get into more leadership positions. And what I didn't expect was that the recommendations that I put in my book will help everyone. It's not just about women. It's creating an equitable workplace. And as Vanessa was just saying about personalisation, and the sort of golden thread through the book is about how you treat everyone as individuals. It crosses, intersectionality. It's not about just women. So that was the biggest learning. And the second learning for me was around how a lot of gender equality in the workplace has to start in the home. And I talk a lot about allyship in the book, not just about allyship in the workplace, but also allyship in the home. And at the end of today, I will be, there's a little puzzle. So I think there's a missing piece to the gender equality jigsaw at the moment. And at the end, when I finish talking, I'm going to ask you all what you think that missing piece is. And the first person to get it right will get a free book. So I'm just going to leave that there. So let me just click onto here. So on your tables, you've got a one-page sort of book on a page sketch note, which hopefully will help to just give you a sense of the book. And really interesting hearing the conversations this morning from Harriet, from Vanessa, from the table discussions, that women are leaving faster than ever. And I'm really passionate and committed to working out why this is. On this career mountain, women go up this career mountain and they drop off. And I'm really, really keen to see how I can work with organisations to really identify why that is and what you can do on that mountain, whether you can create a refuge, whether you can create a stopping off point that you can look at the view and get back on the path again, because it's not fair that women who want to work can't work. So I'm really, really passionate, and I want to work with all of you guys, and I'm working with a number of you already, but just to see what we can do and how we can really understand what those obstacles are. So the story of this book started from a seed, really, around confidence and my own confidence. 10 years ago, I would never, ever have stood up in front of an audience. As Vanessa knows, my business started off being called My Confidence Matters. And I was a very confident child, did lots of singing, lots of acting. And then I went into the management consulting industry when I was in my 20s. And I slowly just thought, actually, I can sing and I can act because I had notes and I had a script. But when it came to me talking, like I'm now, I was terrified and absolutely just thought, well, I can't do that. So many other people here are better than me. It was very male-dominated as well, and I just felt like, well, I'll just sort of do my marketing in the background and didn't really think I had much to sort of add. So that's where my journey started. And only about 7 years ago, I discovered coaching, and I had personal coaches and learned that you can do something about this confidence and be able to stand up and speak in public. It's still really hard for me. I still have, imposter syndrome galore and get very nervous, but I know now there are tools and things I can do to sort it out. But originally, when I set this business up, I thought this was one of the keys to getting women into senior roles. And really interesting, Harriet, seeing your point that the 30% Club said, because that was probably my view 5 or 6 years ago. I thought, yeah, women just need to have more confidence, and then they can get to senior positions. And then throughout, I've written about 70 articles for Forbes, and I've got a podcast called The Confidence Conversation. And through all of those conversations with organisations as well, realise that it's not, you can be really confident, but if the organisations are not set up, designed for women, then they're not going to get anywhere. It's just going to still continue happening. There's a perfect storm of challenges around sort of 40s and 50s that I've discovered, that women who are going sort of older throughout their career have so many other additional things they're trying to deal with as well as work. In your 20s, you start off, it's all about work, having fun, progressing and everything else. And as you get older, these additional things start happening. So which I'll very briefly, I'm not going to sort of talk you through the book in detail because you can buy a copy and read it. But I'll give you a sort of an overview. But the third section of the book is all about obstacles that women face outside of work, and how organisations can try and support that. A lot of organisations were built by men for men. And we know men operate on a 24-hour day cycle. That's the way we've been trying to do things in the past. And I think we forget that women operate on a 28-day cycle. And our hormones are different to men, actually. You know, there are so many things that we have to deal with that are different. And even down to like toilet facilities, being very crude about it. When I'm working with one organisation who said they have offices in Egypt and they've actually wanted to get more women, but they have to build a toilet block for women. You know, it's like as basic as that, because people don't think about it. And I think often when you have senior leadership teams who are all men, you know, the conversation of toilets won't come up, basically. You know, things like having period products in toilets, having toilets near to desks so women can easily go to the toilet very easily. Very basic things like that can actually really impact, and things like being able to work from home if you've got a really bad stomachache or something like that. You don't have to tell everybody, but just to know you don't have to make excuses up. You don't have to say you've got a headache. Just be honest about it. So the book is in 4 parts, and it's a very practical guide. So I interviewed over 100 people for the book, including business leaders. I've actually written this with a business leader audience in mind, because I think to make any change happen, it's got to be led by men, who are in the majority here. If any change is going to happen, it's like Black Lives Matters. You know, it can't be changed by the minority. It has to be changed by the majority. So we need to convince the men in our organisations. So I split the book into 4 different parts. The first section is called, it's all about inclusive leadership, and it's starting from the top. This is about role modelling from the top, and the great leaders I spoke to, so for example, Nathan Coe is one of them, who's the CEO of Auto Trader. He was so passionate about this subject. Nobody was telling him to be, having it on his agenda. He was just so totally passionate, had a real purpose around it. There were many others like that as well, and it just shone through when I was speaking to these people. Nobody was saying, put it on your agenda. It just was on their agenda. And they led with what I call the PACE framework: passion, accountability, so making sure they say they're going to do it and make sure they're kept to account. Curiosity, they don't know what to do, they ask what they can do to help. And empathy. And this empathy as a leadership skill is really, really important, one of the most important managerial skills now. And it's not just the men being sort of leaders from the top, it's about women being really honest as role models as well. So we talked about Jacinda Ardern this morning. People like that being really honest and open about what it's really like to be, running a country, running an organisation. I was chatting to the HR director of Wix a couple of weeks ago, and she said she was asked to speak at a conference for their organisation, and I think that her boss, the CEO, said, could you talk about your personal experience? She's a single mum, co-parenting, and that word came up earlier as well, how she manages with 2 young boys on a board. And she was like, I'm really scared about talking about my personal story. What will people think of me? And she did it, and she said the feedback was phenomenal. And actually just being a senior female who has challenges can manage to talk about it. And she gives the example, she asked the board if they could move their 8 o'clock in the morning meetings to 9 o'clock because of childcare. And she asked the question, and they said yes. So her message is actually just ask. It's not difficult, and make changes happen and think about these things through a gender lens. So that's the first part, inclusive leadership. The second part of the book's about cultural frameworks. And I believe if you think about culture of an organisation through a gender lens, and you have in place flexibility, allyship, and coaching and support, if you have those 3 very simple frameworks in place, a lot of the problems you have and the reasons why women are leaving will go away. So flexibility, that includes things like personalisation. So as we're talking about, making sure you understand line managers have really great conversations with their people. It's about throwing out the rule book around things like ways of working. So job sharing we were chatting about on our table. This is something I have started to become really keen on as a concept because it can really transform the way that women work in senior roles. Flexible networking, thinking about how we do networking in the future. Allyship, and as we know, International Women's Day is coming up, and this is something I'm talking a lot about around International Women's Day, around allyship, and I put together a Gender Allies matrix, which is quite a useful tool, and this can be downloaded from our website, Encompass Equality, or actually the website's don'tfixwomen.com. You can download it from there and have these frameworks that you can use and ask people to think about where they sit on this box around sort of belief and actions around gender equality. So if you want a kind of practical thing to say to get your men engaged in the conversation, have a look at that and think about that. So it's how you get from being an ostrich, putting your head in the sand, to performers who are people who are doing stuff, but they don't really believe in it. They just think they're doing it because it helps on their CV. To apprentices on the bottom right, when people really believe in it, but they don't quite know what to do, and going up to champions in the top right. And our work that we do with organisations is getting allies from that bottom right as apprentices, moving up to champions. And we do that through our Spaces framework, which is all about sponsorship, passing on opportunities, acting with insight, communicating with curiosity, engaging women in meetings, and setting an example. And really breaking it down. The whole book is based on, and there's hundreds of practical tips that you can actually just pick up and run with. So people say, I don't know what to do. You can say, well, here's 6 things you can do. Start with 1, sponsor a woman. We did a program for Wix. I think 150 of their people have gone through our allyship program. And what I'd love to do is say, if all of you in this room start doing allyship programs, having hundreds of your people becoming allies, each sponsoring a woman, that's thousands and thousands of women being sponsored. So let's think about it collectively. Let's start the ripple of change here. The third area is around coaching and support, and this is about having a coaching culture in your organisation. So it's not about necessarily having one-to-one coaching, which is brilliant if you can do it, but having group coaching, having peer coaching, having line managers trained as coaches so that they can have these really great conversations about asking people, how are you? It's not difficult. Ask people, what's going on for you at the moment? So having that coaching culture, it's thinking about feedback and things like that as well. You wouldn't be a coach for a sports race and wait a year to give people feedback on that race. It's about in-the-moment feedback, and that really helps with women's confidence as well. The third area of the book is about understanding the obstacles, and as I said, these are things that happen outside the workplace, typically. So I talk about the 4 M's. I know a number of people in this room have said to me, I've already started using your terminology, 4 M's, which is fantastic. So that stands for monthlies, miscarriage, maternity, and menopause. And if there's one thing you do today is go back to your organisations and start using these words more and asking your colleagues to use these words more and getting it out on the table. And obviously this differs in terms of different cultures, different experiences, and not everybody wants to talk about it. But as an organisation, if you make it a safe place to have those conversations if you want to, things like miscarriage, I've had so many horrible, horrendous stories told to me about women who've had been in a meeting, gone to the loo, had a miscarriage, come back to the table, carried on a meeting, and not told anybody. And it's really hard in that first 3 months of pregnancy when you haven't told people that you're pregnant. And just understanding that these things could be happening to people in your organisation, and they might not tell you that's the reason why they're leaving. So the first one's around hormones. The second one's about caring responsibilities. And this is quite a big one, because obviously women in their 40s and 50s may have caring responsibilities for childcare, elder care, and the one that gets missed out is self-care. As we talked about Jacinda Ardern, thinking about what you can do to keep your own selves really healthy and well, especially when you're taking on all these extra jobs like these gender networks and things. It's really important to think about yourself and how organisations can support that as well. So things like giving you non-negotiable time so you can put stuff in your diary and be really honest and open that this is either I'm going to a yoga class or I'm going to pick my kids up or whatever it might be. And the third area, it doesn't surprise you to hear, is confidence, is one of the 3 obstacles that I see, and I think that often comes as a result of these other 2, because you're struggling. You may have had lack of sleep in a night, you have to get up and speak at an event like this or whatever, and you're just exhausted, and you haven't had time to prepare, and that is what causes this lack of confidence. So it's just being really mindful of that and not expecting too much and giving people time. The final section of the book is the practical steps. So if you are not doing things, this is kind of a 5-step approach to how you can start doing more around this. Educating yourself, thinking about your own leadership style, and understanding these obstacles. Talk to women in your team, considering the culture through a gender lens, and then start making changes today. So I talk in the book about a Chinese proverb, which is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So use that and ask people to think about what they're going to do today. I talked to David Schwimmer, who, not the Friends David Schwimmer, sadly, but the CEO of the London Stock Exchange, and he said he was talking to a room of women like this, and one person asked the question, what are you doing around gender equality? And he said, oh, we're doing this, that, and the other, but it's going to take us a long time to achieve it. And this woman's face was like, why? You know, why is it going to take so long? And so from that point onwards, he's like made it his priority to make sure these things happen. So that's it in a nutshell. I know Vanessa's standing up now. So has anybody, before I finish, has anybody want to guess at what that missing piece of the gender equality jigsaw is for a free book? Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned in the start, you mentioned the family part, and I think it's really important. Also, if a man, let's start with that, is supportive at home and understands what his partner or sister or whoever goes through, then he will be more empathetic at work. So starting with paternity leave, if he experiences that, he will then understand why women his organizations need.
You've got it. The answer was men. So, yeah, book. You can come and get a book at the end. Thank you so much. And I didn't actually, I'm sure we can leave this with you, but one thing we are doing, just very quickly mentioning some research about why women are leaving. And I'd love to invite all of you to a seminar which we're launching this research about why women are leaving. And I'd love to work with all of you to see if we can get some data to help with that research. Thank you.
We can definitely circulate that.
Thank you.